Everyone knows the tape don't lie. It's Marcus Johnson's job to tell us the story behind the tape with the Morning Tailgate on Raider Nation Radio 920 AM.
Hour number 3 here on the Morning Tailgate. It is Raider Nation Radio 920. Vince Safienza, Vinny Bonsignor, Clay Baker coming to you live from Las Vegas, July 2nd, a Wednesday. The week of the 4th, where we're just a couple days away from the greatest sporting event in the history of mankind. Clay, I found out that they're going to have weigh-ins tomorrow.
That's the best thing ever. I would go to the weigh-in.
I would go to the weigh-in ahead of the hot dog eating contest. Are you kidding me? Seeing Joey Jaws Chestnut weigh in before he collects a record number mustard belt.
I'm surrounded by such low bars for entertainment value. I would have never thought that about you, Vince, or you, Clay. That you guys have such low bars for entertainment value. I know
you don't.
Let's put it up for a vote.
You know who knows entertainment? Marcus Johnson, Tape Don't Lie. He joins us here on the Morning Tailgate as he does
Marcus,
every
help me
Wednesday.
out, brother. Marcus, please help me out.
The hot dog eating contest is, without question,
help me out, Marcus.
In a tier above all else.
I'll say this: Marcus has never watched it. Like
sporting event in the history of mankind.
Marcus, how many times have you ever watched the hot dog eating contest?
You're right, Vinny. 0.
Exactly. Thank you. Great minds think alike.
He just doesn't
working with a couple of knuckleheads over here.
He just doesn't know yet. Marcus, I implore you. I urge you. You don't have to watch the weigh-ins tomorrow. That's a little too much. That's a little too much right off the top.
It's not for everybody.
It's not for everybody.
Yeah.
But on what's 4th of July? Friday. On Friday, 9 a.m.
Mm-hmm.
Saddle up.
Yeah.
Strap in.
Oh, my God.
And get ready for 12 minutes.
Marcus, you got to see their faces. They're high-fiving each other. They're they're chest bumping each other. These guys live for the most ridiculous event that's ever been televised
I think he
or put out there.
mispronounced
They would buy
awesome.
Tickets to this thing.
Oh, 100%.
We're proud with national.
Can you imagine that?
I guess it is.
Marcus.
Go ahead, Wait, let's hear what Marcus has to say. Go.
It's kind of gross to me. I don't know. Just watching like stuffed hot dogs and it's just like over.
Yeah. Marcus, Clay was in the splash zone of the bagel eating contest with Joey Chestnut. And he got water splashed in his face.
Water. All right? And I stood there like a soldier watching that all, because I realized this is what separates America from the other countries.
Save me, my man.
Marcus,
please.
Good morning, Marcus.
God help us all. God help us all.
Okay, all right, but Marcus, let's say there was a food out there that you were like, you know what, I could competitively eat this. Like, if it wasn't hot dogs, what would be some food out there that you'd be like, oh, I could give somebody a run for their money if we competed here?
Chicken wings. It'd be chicken wings.
Okay, so we're not far apart.
Oh, okay. Barbecue, medium, mild. Does it matter?
I like dry rub. So I was kind of
okay. We're still at the concession stand. We're at the same concession stand.
We're back on it now.
At any football.
Don't let them drag you into their
Marcus
madness.
Is there.
Don't let them drag you in, Marcus.
All right, Marcus.
Hell yeah, Marcus.
Good morning.
A man of class and
dignity.
Dignity, exactly.
Marcus, the topic that we've been talking about this morning here on the Morning Tailgate is we saw a recent list on CBS Sports of the top 100 NFL players, according to CBS Sports, and there were 2 Raiders on the team, Max Crosby and Brock Bowers. We are forecasting how many Raiders could be on next year's list. Clay and I have said 4. Vinny has said 5. I'll let him kind of talk about his. But one of the names that is on my list is Jeremy Chinn. And this is a guy that I think is going to have a monster statistical season for the Silver and Black on defense. I'm curious as the summer comes on, we get set for training camp, and we went through OTAs. What is the expectation for you in terms of Jeremy Chinn, and what kind of impact we're going to see for him with the Raiders?
After covering like the AFC West and looking at those offenses, you could see why they brought in certain players, and I think Jeremy Chinn is one of those guys because he was brought in to come down and play a lot of these tight ends because the Chargers, they focus on throwing to the tight ends, and then of course you got the Chiefs with Travis Kelce, and I think that was a big factor of why they brought him in because he's able to do that. There's something on film that you see from him right away is his ability to cover tight ends. And really have the athleticism to do it. and that size. So it allows him to be versatile with the safeties, and they can move him around a little bit, and then he can play slot. And if they are going to run the ball and he's playing inside, he has the ability to take on guards and tight ends and things like that, and make. And he's a great tackler too. So that's always going to come up when he's playing the run. So I think that's a huge factor of why they brought him in and why he could have a big season. Chin, one thing that that's really great about him is he has a lot of ball skills too in zone coverage. I mean, he can make interceptions in key moments like he did against the Lions. The Lions were driving and trying to get back into that game. He made a key interception in that game, and he's just a good player that can always have that great season. And that is a point that you make. He could maybe end up in that top 100. I mean, it's a little harder for safeties to get love in the NFL these days. I mean, unless you have like the 7 interceptions and stuff like that. But he is a big factor of how they want to play and play against the AFC West, because just going through all those teams and then seeing what they did in the offseason, are really matched, because they really want to compete in probably one of the toughest divisions in the NFL, and I think Jeremy Chin is a big factor in that.
Marcus, one of the players that I have moving onto that list is Jackson Powers Johnson. I'm really bullish on the Raiders' young center, and I think that it's not going to be too long down the road where I believe he's going to be a top 5 center in this game. Talk about how somebody like a Jackson Powers Johnson can make that leap from a young player that he is to one of the more established centers in this game.
I think a big factor in Jackson Powers Johnson getting more love is Ashton Jeanty having a big season. I think if Jeanty has that season that we all expect him to have, we're going to get more focus on how good the offensive line is playing, and that's kind of get uplift Jackson Powers Johnson. And plus his attitude and just the way he plays, him being a crazy man on the field, and just having that personality, that leadership he brings to the offensive line from the center position, that's all going to stand out. And I think a lot of that offensive line love, that factoring, it comes in first with the love from the running back. I think if Ashton Jeanty has the season that we have and he has like 1,400 yards, like I said, that spotlight goes to the offensive line, and you might see more offensive linemen from the Raiders make the Pro Bowl maybe than you should expect based off of Ashton Jeanty's season. So, but I still think Jackson Powers Johnson, he has that name recognition. I think PFF even said that he's supposed to be their breakout player for them, and there's a big reason for that, because he, at the center position, he really, I thought he really solidified himself, what he can do with the NFL, because it's just the way the team played around him when he was at the center, and the way he can communicate. And I know he has a little bit of issues, like with the snap at the Chiefs game, but he is a rookie, and he's got to learn from those things. And he's the type of player to kind of get better from that. But yeah, I think the biggest factor in him getting love is Ashton Jeanty having a season. But if Ashton Jeanty's having a big season, so is Jackson Powers Johnson, and you can kind of see him rise just because he is a name that people really like, and his attitude, his personality, it's really going to shine if the Raiders have a huge run game.
This is the voice of Marcus Johnson from Tape Don't Lie on YouTube. Go up to YouTube, subscribe to Tape Don't Lie, an abundance of information, even during the offseason, where they go deep dives on player profiles and just uncovering some great stuff on the AFC West opponents. Marcus Johnson here with us on Wednesdays at this time. My guy I put on my list was Dante Thornton. I was thinking that maybe he could have like a realistic high-end projection where he's making highlight reel catches, major breakout star, somebody that could maybe even flirt with double-digit touchdowns. What's a realistic best-case scenario for somebody like Dante Thornton to maybe splash into the league?
Yeah, I think with Thornton, for him to make that huge splash into the league like that, I mean, of course, you'd have to have the targets, but I think this year he's going to be that type of player where, the yards is going to add up, where he's having like 19 yards per catch and that those kind of stats where he might have a high amount of yards, like 700 or something like that, but the catches might be a little bit lower, because I think this year he's going to be used as a deep threat, like on those deep posts and those throws that Geno Smith really likes to throw. And, Geno Smith, he's not scared to throw the ball downfield, especially if he trusts you to make plays for him. So I think that's how Thornton can really make a splash, year one, because, Bowers is going to get a lot of targets. So is Jacoby Myers, and Thornton's he's got to come in there and be a huge play guy, be a guy in the red zone that can score a lot of touchdowns. And so it probably had to, cause a little bit of maybe some players going down for him to get those type of targets where he's really producing like that and really showing that he's the number one year one. But I do think like from a yards per catch perspective, that's where you're going to see it from Thornton, where Thornton's making those huge highlight plays and people really get to know his name just based off that speed and him just running past some corners. Because there's going to be some corners in the NFL that I just can't hang with them. Not every single corner in the NFL runs a 4.3, and especially when you get later on in the season when you are dealing with injuries, you're going to be able to watch him kind of just run past guys, especially if the run game's working and they're getting them single high looks and doing a lot of play action and things like that. And Chip Kelly's mixing it up. You're going to see a lot of big plays from Dante Thornton.
It's Marcus Johnson here on the Morning Tailgate. Follow him on the X at the Mark John NFL, and a conversation we're likely going to have tomorrow as we look ahead to training camp are the battles. Nothing like a training camp battle to set us all ablaze. When you look ahead to the Raiders training camp and the different position groups and competition that will be happening there, what is the one battle that you're looking forward to seeing how it plays out the most?
I think the left guard position is really a key one that's going to kind of set the tone for how this team is going to look. Do they go Jordan Meredith? Do they go Dylan Parham? And then is Thayer Mumford, is he a sneaky guy that just because how big he is and how much he can make guys move in the run game, does he sneak in there and get that left guard position? Like those things, it's going to be a real big factor between those three. I think, Dylan Parham, he just has more of that, the playing time. So he's a little bit more, you can't say a full-on veteran, but he just has more of the snaps and the playing time where he might be a safer guy to go with because you know how he's going to play. You know what type of player he is. He has good technique. Of course, he has some issues with play strength that you just aren't going to fix just because he's a lighter guy. But, he still has the technique down. He's going to understand the offense really quickly. He's a really smart player. But I do think Thayer Mumford is a factor there, because we actually did Parham versus Meredith for our next show. And, at the end of the show, we were talking about how maybe it might be Mumford winning that job just because how big he is, how he moves people in the run game. And, we haven't seen him play left guard, so we don't know how much of a pass protector he is. But we know at left guard, if he's pulling around the corner, he has that movement and that speed to kind of just knock anybody over. And, they might like that just because his size and what he can do at that position. So I think the left guard is kind of just up for grabs at this point in time. And we're going to see what happens with that, especially if Parham dealing with some injuries. He might have to sit out a couple of days to start off camp. I don't know how. I know he missed the end of OTAs because of injuries, so I don't know how serious those injuries are. Mumford might be that type of guy who might sneak in and take that job.
Agreed. Hey, Marcus, when you look at the Raiders linebacker room, it's kind of an interesting place. You've got, three starting caliber players in Devin White, Elandon Roberts, and Pratt, Jermaine Pratt, who they just signed. But all three players are on one-year contracts, so they're going to need somebody at some point to step up behind them. Obviously next year's draft probably comes into play at linebacker as well. But when you look at Cody Lindenberg and you look at Tommy Eichenberg and you look at Amari Gaynor, who do you think is going to be the guy that at the end of this year announces himself to the Raiders as somebody that's going to be worthy of taking maybe one of those spots for guys that invariably are going to leave at the end of this year?
If I had to make a bet on that, I'd go Lindenberg, just because Lindenberg is just such a leader on defense. And, he just sees, you watch him at Minnesota, he's directing everybody. He's helping the defensive linemen. He's helping the DBs get set up. He knows everything that's happening around him on defense. And he just has a great instinct at the linebacker position. He's always shooting the right gap. And he always has the correct leverage. He doesn't mind taking on guards with his hands. There's a lot of great things that Lindenberg does on film. And, of course, some of the athletic limitations, you see linebackers like that maybe fall a little bit. But even at the Senior Bowl, he had some good instances in coverage when he was guarding running backs one-on-one. He wasn't getting really beat like that, when it's, constantly getting beat when he's in those one-on-ones against the running backs and during those one-on-one coverages, during the Senior Bowl. So what you see from Cody Lindenberg is just that leadership linebacker, that type of guy that maybe, like I said, he's not the most, crazy athlete. He's not Fred Warner or anything like that, but he's such an instinctful, natural linebacker. And, he's such a smart player, too. that he ends up, kind of rising up the depth chart because they trust him to be out there if some guys go down. Like, if Landon Roberts or Jermaine Pratt go down, there's maybe a guy that you trust to kind of run things, to kind of, give him that green dot, let him control the defense, because he'll have a great understanding of what Pete Carroll and Patrick Graham want him to do. So I think Lindenberg would definitely be that type of guy that can kind of just sneak in and eventually just keep rising up the depth chart.
Follow Marcus on X at @TheMarkJohnNFL. Also, when it comes to maybe camp battles, one in the depth position for the running back room, and it makes you wonder, like, how will this work out between maybe two guys, Sincere McCormick and Zamir White? What would be the traits that you would like to see come out of those two battling out for a spot on the rotation?
I think it's Zamir White. We talked watching him from 2023 and watching him to 2024. You can kind of see that maybe he bulked up too much. His explosiveness was kind of gone this past year. Because when I was doing the Dylan Parham breakdown, I went back to 2023 and watched him play left guard, and there's a different explosive movement from Zamir White that you just didn't see last season. So maybe he ended up, maybe he can get that explosiveness back, that burst. Because he always has some vision problems, but when you don't have that burst and you have those vision problems, that's where you had the season that he had last year. So, and he's got to get back to showing that speed, and like I said, maybe he gained a little bit too much weight there. But Sincere McCormick, if he can come back healthy, I think that's a guy that maybe could beat out Zamir White, just because when you watch him run, he is just a running back that has great vision. He understands offensive line leverage, when to cut up field, and a lot of those things, and he reads blocks really well. So I think he is a sneaky player, just because if he ended up finishing that season, we don't know if Zamir White might not even be the factor to be that number 2 running back. I'm not saying Sincere McCormick would have stopped him from drafting Ashton Genty. I don't believe that, but I think that when you have this battle that we're talking about with Zamir White, I mean, it might not even be the question if Sincere McCormick ended up finishing the season, but he got hurt, and so it just didn't work out for him that way. But if he ended up finishing the season, we might be having a totally different conversation about him. So, yeah, it's going to be exciting to see what he can do out there. And if he can win that number 2 job, number 3 job actually behind Raheem Mostert, if he can win that job, I think that, Zamir White, who knows what happens with him, he might get released. But I think Sincere McCormick is a guy that, he could come in there and just beat out Zamir White really quickly.
Marcus Johnson, before we let you go, the other topic of the morning was our favorite memories of football conditioning tests.
Or worst.
Or worst. Or worst memories.
For me, man.
Does anything stick out for you back in your heyday, whether it be football or any other sport?
When the offensive linemen don't do the gassers correctly, that's always the worst.
What?
I'll explain it.
Why did the whole team suffer?
Yeah, the whole team suffer. Yeah.
Way to go, Vinny. Way to go, Vinny.
What a way to put it on our shoulders.
100%.
When they don't make it in time, the offensive lineman guy, it's time. Everybody's got to make it at a certain time, and that guy doesn't make it. Oh, my God.
In the boiling heat in Phoenix.
Yeah. Oh, man.
What time did you guys practice? What time did you guys practice?
Oh, my coach was crazy. We used to practice right in the heat, like 2 o'clock.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well.
Yeah. I played for the most winningest coach in Arizona history. So
yeah. He's like, check the record, buddy.
Okay.
Marcus, wait. You put all the blame on the offensive lineman. What position were you?
I was a DB.
DB. Just making sure. For our audience members that didn't know.
Prima donna.
Diva. Wide receiver over here, so good company. We made our times.
Yeah, as I said, I made my time.
Made my time. How about you, Vinny? How are you on your times?
Lousy. Why do you think I'm in the industry that I'm in?
Marcus,
I knew early on.
What do we got on deck? What can Raider Nation be looking for this week?
So we're finally going to end under our greatest Raiders team of all time on Thursday, so check that out tomorrow. And then also dropping today is Dylan Parham versus Jordan Meredith, so we're looking at that camp battle today. So be on the lookout for that, and we're going to continue looking at camp battles for the next couple of weeks. So we're going to just kind of deep dive and get ready for training camp here.
All right. He is Marcus Johnson.
Excellent.
With a little bit of Thayer Munford.
On YouTube.
Yeah.
I love that.
Go check it out. I like the top 100 as well. All right, Marcus, let's do it again next week. Appreciate you.
Thanks, guys.
Enjoy the hot dog eating contest. Happy